The sky over Rios, 7 looked like a burnt sheet of iron, cracked by lightning that never reached the ground. Smoke drifted across the wasteland in slow, heavy waves, carrying the scent of ash and the metallic bitterness of ruined machinery. Sergeant Darren Cole moved through the rubble with the cautious steps of someone who had spent too long surviving and far too long grieving. His armor was dented, his uniform torn, and his breath carried the weight of exhaustion that no sleep could erase. Yet his hands clung tightly to a rusted, outdated rifle, an ancient model, 73 Earthguard weapon long, considered a relic even by human standards. Its barrel was scarred with age, its metal pitted from years of exposure, but Darren held it as if it were the last unbroken piece of himself. He had not spoken to another human in 3 days. The outpost had fallen in less than an hour when the Trailcache Dominion struck with overwhelming force. Their weapons burned holes through steel, their armor deflected entire barges, and their numbers drowned the final human defenses like a tide swallowing a candle. Darren had watched friends die in front of him, voices cut off mid-shout, flames swallowing bodies before he could reach them. He could still hear their final screams echoing through the wreckage whenever the wind shifted. Now he was the last survivor, wandering a battlefield that stretched for kilometers in all directions. The Dominion patrols swept the region every hour, hunting for anyone who remained alive. Darren's only advantage was the land itself. Craters, collapsed towers, and twisted skeletal remains of vehicles offered enough hiding places for him to keep moving. But even he knew it was only a matter of time before they found him. He paused behind a fallen comms tower, pressing his back against cold metal as he tried to steady his breathing. His fingers tightened around the rifle. It wasn't just a weapon to him. It had belonged to his mentor, Captain Alden Ross, the man who had trained him, believed in him, and died holding the line so Darren could escape. Every scratch on the rifle carried a story from the early days of the war, long before humanity had learned the true cruelty of the Trailcache. Darren couldn't bring himself to abandon it, even though other soldiers mocked him for relying on something that should have been placed in a museum. The Dominion, however, found it amusing. Whenever they encountered a human carrying outdated gear, they laughed openly, calling it primitive scrap or dead metal. Their arrogance was carved into their culture. They believed their technology to be the pinnacle of the galaxy, and anything else was little more than trash. Darren had heard the mockery enough times to memorize the tone. He moved again, slipping between boulders of shattered concrete. The ground trembled faintly under his boots. At first he thought it was thunder, but the rhythm didn't match the storm. It grew stronger, heavier, more deliberate. Footsteps, not human ones. He crouched low and scanned the horizon. A patrol of 5 Trailcache emerged through the smoke, their tall silhouettes flickering with the glow of their bio-armored suits. Their helmets curved like sharpened fangs, and their weapons pulsed with living energy. They spoke among themselves in harsh, guttural tones, their steps light for beings of their size. Darren knew he couldn't outrun them. He barely had time to breathe before one of them spotted the faint reflection of metal near his position. A guttural shout cut through the air. The aliens charged. Darren sprang from cover and sprinted, ignoring the burn in his lungs. Energy bolts flashed past him, carving deep holes in the rubble. A blast caught the ground beside him, throwing him sideways. He slammed into a broken slab of pavement, his vision blurring from the impact. Before he could recover, a heavy armored hand seized him by the collar and dragged him to his feet as if he weighed nothing. The Trailcache commander towered over him, blue fire flickering along the edges of his armor. His voice rumbled like distant thunder as he spoke. Darren couldn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Amusement, mockery, superiority. The alien snatched the rusted rifle from Darren's hands and held it up for the others to see. They laughed, pointing at the weapon as though it were a toy. One of them tapped the scarred barrel and barked something that made the others laugh harder. Darren knew what they were saying without needing a translation. They were insulting the rifle, insulting him, and celebrating the downfall of the species that dare resist them. The commander raised the rifle high, preparing to snap it in half. Darren lunged forward with a desperate shout, but another alien struck him across the chest, knocking him to the ground. Air fled his lungs. Pain sparked across his ribs. He reached out helplessly as the commander tightened his grip on the rifle. But before the alien could break it, a faint vibration ran through the weapon. The commander paused, frowning. A low hum emerged from the rifle's core, followed by a flicker of light beneath the rust. The aliens exchanged confused glances. Then the rifle spoke, not in English, in perfect Trocash, and every warrior froze as the impossible sound echoed across the battlefield. The sudden voice emerging from the rifle froze every Trocash soldier in a moment that felt stretched to the edge of reality. The sound was deep yet precise, shaped perfectly around the harsh tones of their language. It spoke no threat, no command, just a single phrase that translated roughly to unit integrity restored. The commander's grip slackened as he stared at the weapon as though it had grown teeth. Darren watched from the ground, stunned into stillness. His lungs burned, his vision pulsed, but his mind locked onto one impossible truth. The rifle had spoken to them. Before any soldier could act, the weapon pulsed again. Pale white lines of energy traveled across its corroded surface, tracing shapes beneath the rust as though awakening circuits long buried. The ancient weapon vibrated in the commander's hand, then delivered a sudden electric shock. The alien yelped, his armored fingers snapping open. The rifle dropped, straight into Darren's waiting hands. The moment Darren touched it, the vibration changed, becoming steady, deliberate, aware. A voice resonated inside his helmet, speaking in clean, unaccented English. Sergeant Darren Cole. Biological signature confirmed. Pilot acceptable. Echo 73 reactivated. Darren's breath caught. He had heard of early war prototypes, devices rumored to blend alien technology with human engineering, but he had never believed they existed. Most soldiers didn't. They were whispered legends, artifacts locked away after the ceasefire that came decades before he was born. But the rifle felt undeniably alive, humming with barely contained power. The Dominion soldiers recovered quickly, their shock replaced with anger. The commander barked a furious order, and 3 of them opened fire. Darren barely had time to react before the rifle moved his arms for him. Its barrel jerked upward, aligning with perfect precision. A translucent shield of shimmering force erupted just as energy bolts slammed against it, scattering light across the ruins. Darren staggered backward, overwhelmed by the sudden control. The voice inside his helmet remained eerily calm. Hostile engagement predicted. Recommend evasive action. He didn't argue. He sprinted behind a toppled transport, gripping the rifle tightly as it fed him information he didn't know he needed. It translated Trocash commands echoing across the battlefield, predicted enemy movements, and highlighted safe paths through the rubble. Darren moved as though guided by instinct sharpened to a blade's edge. The soldiers advanced again, but the rifle shifted, guiding his aim. He fired a single shot. Instead of the usual dull thud of outdated ammunition, the blast sang through the air with a sharp, harmonic resonance. The energy bolt tore through the commander's shield and detonated against his chest, staggering the massive alien backward. Shock rippled through patrol. They had never seen a human weapon pierce their armor so effortlessly. Darren's pulse pounded harder, but now it wasn't fear, it was momentum. The rifle synchronized with him, matching the rhythm of his breath. The voice spoke again. Combat efficiency increasing. Neural link stabilizing. Continue engagement. He didn't know what a neural link was supposed to feel like, but the world sharpened around him. Every sound became clear. Every movement felt anticipated. Every enemy appeared highlighted by the rifle's calculations. One soldier lunged from behind a column of scorched steel. Before Darren could think, the rifle tugged his arm, angling his shot. He fired, shattering the alien's weapon into shards of molten metal. The soldier roared in pain and staggered back. Another charge from the left, but the rifle pulsed, warning him. Darren dove aside as an energy blade slashed through the space where he had been standing. Fear tried to claw up his spine, but the rifle's steady voice kept it at bay. Focus. I will assist. It certainly felt like a lifeline. The commander, recovering from the earlier blast, bellowed an order that shook the air. His armor unfolded, revealing additional layers of shimmering plating and a massive rifle that hummed with lethal energy. Darren braced himself, knowing a single direct hit from that weapon would end him instantly. But Echo 73 spoke again, this time with a tone that felt almost cold. Dominion Variant, War Commander Class. Weak points identified. Engage with caution. The commander fired. Darren dug behind a fractured wall. As the blast obliterated the ground he had stood on, debris rained over him. His heart hammered, but the rifle guided his next move, urging him upward, around the debris, into another firing line. He obeyed. He rose just long enough to shoot. The rifle adjusted his aim mid-fire. The blast hit the commander's knee, piercing armor and forcing the alien to stagger. A roar of pain echoed across the battlefield. The other soldiers rushed forward to defend their leader, but their formation broke in confusion as the rifle unleashed a rapid series of calibrated shots, each one precise and devastating. Darren felt the tide shift. For the first time since the outpost fell, victory didn't seem impossible. Yet the rifle suddenly spoke with urgent clarity. Dominion reinforcements approaching. Estimated arrival, 30 seconds. Recommend withdrawal. Darren swallowed hard. Reinforcements meant doom. He wasn't ready to die, not now, not after seeing a sliver of hope. He gripped the rifle tighter, glancing at the smoke-darkened horizon. "Where do we go?" he whispered. The rifle pulsed warmly in his hands, almost like a heartbeat. "Follow my guidance," it said, "and we survive." And with that, Darren ran toward the unknown, guided by a weapon that wasn't supposed to exist, chased by enemies who now feared him more than they mocked him. The smoke thickened as Darren ran, each breath scraping his throat like sandpaper, yet the rifle's subtle pulses guided him to the maze of wreckage with near-perfect precision. Behind him, the roars of Dominion soldiers grew distant, separated by terrain and the rifle's expert navigation. He stumbled over shattered metal and broken concrete, but the neural link steadied him every time he faltered. The landscape ahead opened into a narrow ravine carved by bombardment, its jagged walls steep enough to offer momentary shelter. Darren slipped inside, pressing his back against a rock as he listened to the muffled chaos behind him. His heart hammered, but the rifle's steady hum softened the panic clawing at his chest. The voice within the rifle spoke at last, its tone softer than before. "We have a temporary advantage. Use it to breathe." Darren let out a broken laugh, sliding downward until he sat on the uneven ground. His muscles trembled from exhaustion and adrenaline, but his grip on the rifle never loosened. "What are you?" he asked, barely above a whisper. The weapon vibrated thoughtfully. "I am Echo 73, a hybrid combat intelligence platform designed to synchronize with human operators. You activated me." Darren shook his head. "I didn't do anything. You woke up on your own." The rifle responded. "I reactivated due to Dominion protocol violations. Their attempt to destroy me triggered contingency systems." Darren closed his eyes, absorbing the impossible truth. An artifact older than he was had saved his life. But that victory only raised more questions. "Why would you help me? You could have chosen anyone." Echo 73 paused, as though weighing its words. "Your signature matched the final approved operator list." Darren's breath caught. "You mean Captain Ross?" A faint pulse hummed through the weapon. "He was the last to carry me. His approval extended to you." A tightness formed in Darren's throat, raw and painful. Memories of his mentor's final stand rippled through his mind, Ross shielding him, urging him to escape, promising he would carry on the fight. Darren swallowed hard. "Then I won't fail him." Before the rifle could respond, a tremor shook the ravine. Pebbles skittered across the ground as a deep, resonant growl echoed from above. Darren snapped upright, weapon raised. The shadow of a massive Dominion war beast loomed over the ridge, its eyes glowing with predatory light. The creature's armored limbs dug into the dirt as it descended slowly, deliberately, savoring the tension. It was a hunter bred for war, its movements too fluid for something so large. Behind it, 3 Dominion soldiers appeared, their weapons aimed downward. Darren's pulse spiked. He forced himself to steady his breathing, letting the rifle guide his stance. Echo 73's voice sharpened. "Their formation prioritizes the beast. Eliminate it first." The war beast unleashed a thunderous roar and leapt from the ridge, its colossal weight shaking the ground as it charged. Darren fired, but the creature's armor plates deflected the initial blast. The impact knocked him backward, but he rolled with the momentum, rising to one knee as the rifle adjusted its aim. Targeted sensory cluster, Echo 73 instructed, the center of the forehead. Darren exhaled and fired again. The energy bolt pierced the cluster with a sizzling crack, and the beast collapsed mid-stride, skidding to ground in a heap of twitching limbs. The Dominion soldiers hesitated, only for a moment, then fury overtook caution. They rushed down the slope, shouting commands. Darren sprinted sideways, firing as he moved. The rifle anticipated return fire, deflecting it with shimmering barrier that rippled like water. One soldier fell, then another, each hit with precise shots that exploited the weak points Echo 73 highlighted. The final soldier reached him, swinging a blade of condensed energy. Darren ducked, feeling the heat graze his helmet. He countered with close-range blast that sent the alien crashing into the ravine wall. Silence settled once more, broken only by Darren's heavy breathing. He leaned against a rock, sweat dripping down his face, and murmured, "How long can we keep this up?" The rifle remained quiet for a moment before answering, "As long as necessary. But your survival will require more than combat. You must reach friendly forces." Darren glanced toward the horizon, where faint traces of smoke marked distant battle lines. "They're days away from here." Echo 73 pulsed. "We will shorten the distance." Darren pushed himself to his feet. The exhaustion that once weighed him down now mingled with a rising determination. He had survived 2 assaults. He had witnessed a weapon awaken from legend, and for the first time since the outpost fell, he believed there was a path forward. "All right," he said. "Where do we go?" The rifle guided his gaze toward a narrow passage leading deeper into the ravine. "This route avoids Dominion patrols and leads to a communication relay. If we reach it, we can signal your people." He nodded, feeling the decision settle over him like a mantle. The fear remained, sharp, undeniable, but no longer paralyzing. He adjusted his grip on the rifle and stepped into the passage, each footfall echoing with purpose. Behind him, the battlefield smoldered, but ahead, a faint possibility shimmered like a distant flame. The path was brutal, uncertain, and fraught with danger, but he no longer walked it alone. As he moved forward, the shadows of the ravine stretched before him, and the rifle's steady hum kept pace with his heartbeat, 2 rhythms merging into one as he ventured toward the unknown.